Hello everyone. Today, we're excited to introduce to you a magnificent cultivation fantasy series titled Sword of Coming. In Sword of Coming, viewers are transported into a vast and mystical world of cultivation, where spiritual energy fills the heavens and earth, and the path to becoming a true powerhouse is shaped by one's will, enlightenment, and the sword in their hand. The story follows a young man named Chen Ping'an, seemingly ordinary, yet blessed with a rare destiny capable of reshaping his entire life. From his very first steps into the Tao, he gradually rises through the many realms of cultivation, overcomes deadly heavenly tribulations, and uncovers ancient secrets buried for countless eras. Along his journey, he encounters wise masters whose teachings influence his path, forms unbreakable bonds with loyal companions, and faces countless dangers from spirit beasts, foreign races, and hidden demonic cultivators lurking in the shadows. Every time Chen Ping'an draws his sword, the heavens tremble. Every moment of enlightenment brings him one step closer to defying fate and carving his own destiny. Sword of Coming captivates viewers not only with its magical battles and ancient divine weapons, but also with its grand cultivation world, where all beings fight for a single chance to step onto the immortal path and rewrite the story of their lives. And now, let us step into episode 1 of Sword of Coming. The second day of the second month on the lunar calendar was said to be the day that the dragon raised its head, also known as the Longtaido Festival. In the darkness of the night, a thin and lonely young boy named Chen Ping'an quietly followed the local traditions in a small, secluded alley called Clay Vase Alley. In one hand, he held a flickering candle, and in the other, a delicate peach branch. The candlelight illuminated the ceiling, the walls, and the wooden bed in his modest room, while he tapped the peach branch gently against the walls, reciting an ancient mantra that had been passed down through generations. On the second day of the second month, the candle illuminates the ceiling, while the peach branch taps the walls, leaving no place for snakes and insects to hide. Chen Ping'an's life had been harsh and lonely from the very beginning. Both of his parents had passed away when he was very young, leaving him to grow up in a town renowned for its chinaware. Since the founding of the nation, the town had been responsible for producing fine porcelain for the imperial court, and imperial officials were constantly stationed there to supervise the official kilns. Without anyone to care for him, Chen Ping'an became a potter at a very young age. He began with menial labor, performing the most tedious and demanding tasks under the supervision of a master with a terrible temper. Just as he began to grasp the basics of pottery firing, disaster struck. The town abruptly lost the right to host official kilns. In a single night, all of the dozens of dragon-shaped kilns were ordered to shut down by the authorities. Chen Ping'an watched the town's lifeblood vanish, and with it, his prospects for survival. He remembered his old master, a man surnamed Yao, who had been strict yet dedicated. He had accepted Chen Ping'an as only a half-disciple, never fully appreciating his efforts. The previous year, Chen Ping'an had discovered that Master Yao had passed away peacefully while sitting in a small bamboo chair, facing the kiln with his eyes closed. Yet devotion and rigor, Chen Ping'an realized, were rare qualities, and few could survive or thrive on them alone. For generations, the town's potters had only dared to produce official porcelain. They were forbidden to sell imperial ware to ordinary people or exceed their assigned boundaries. With the official kilns closed and no one willing to teach him further, 14-year-old Chen Ping'an was left to wander back to Clay Vase Alley. Returning to a dilapidated home under bleak conditions, he had no wealth to squander and barely enough to feed himself from his meager savings. A few days earlier, Chen Ping'an had heard that a foreign blacksmith, surnamed Ruan, had arrived in a nearby alley, taking on several disciples without pay, only offering meals. Chen Ping'an had eagerly sought apprenticeship, but the blacksmith barely looked at him and turned him away. Confused, Chen Ping'an wondered if strength was irrelevant in this trade, replaced instead by charm or appearance. Despite his frail looks, he had spent years developing physical strength through pottery molding and long days of labor. He had also traveled extensively with Master Yao, performing arduous tasks without complaint. Yet his efforts had never earned him approval. The master's favoritism was evident. Another disciple, Lu Shenyang, excelled in the same tasks within half a year, whereas Chen Ping'an took 3 years to achieve comparable skill. Still, Chen Ping'an persisted. Every day, he practiced pottery molding in his imagination, envisioning a bluestone slab and a wheel before him. Every 15 minutes, he paused briefly to shake out his wrists, repeating the process until exhausted, then performed stretches in the yard. No one had taught him these routines, they were habits he had created to push himself forward. Suddenly, the quiet night was interrupted by a mocking laugh. Chen Ping'an stopped and looked up to see a boy roughly his age squatting atop the courtyard wall, sneering down at him. This boy, Song Jixin, was a former neighbor and the illegitimate son of the former kiln supervision official. Left behind when his father returned to the capital, Song Jixin lived a carefree, leisurely life, accompanied by his maidservant Zhi Gui, while Chen Ping'an struggled to survive. At that moment, a voice called from the entrance. "Are you willing to sell that maidservant?" Song Jixin's eyes widened in surprise as a young boy dressed in brocade stood outside the courtyard, accompanied by a tall, benevolent-looking elderly man. The boy's attention quickly fell on Song Jixin and Zhi Gui, his gaze lingering with a faint smile. "Sure, why not?" Song Jixin replied casually. The brocade-robed boy asked, "How much do you want for her?" Zhi Gui's eyes widened in shock, but Song Jixin immediately raised the price to 10,000 taels of silver. The boy nodded calmly, then smiled faintly. "I was just fooling around," he said, leaving Song Jixin frustrated. Then the boy turned to Chen Ping'an. "It is thanks to you that I was able to buy that carp today," he said, tossing an embroidered pouch to Chen Ping'an. "After taking it home, I fell in love with it, and I had to come and thank you in person. That is why I asked Grandpa Wu to bring me here." With a vibrant smile, he departed, leaving Chen Ping'an bewildered. Earlier that day, Chen Ping'an had seen a middle-aged man with a golden carp in a basket. He had attempted to buy it for 15 copper coins, unable to afford the asking price of 30. But the brocade-robed boy and the elderly man had walked by and purchased it effortlessly for 50 coins, leaving Chen Ping'an to watch wistfully. Song Jixin, regaining his composure, turned to Chen Ping'an and asked if he remembered that four-leg from last month. Chen Ping'an nodded, recalling the incident clearly. A creature known locally as a four-legged snake had repeatedly tried to enter Song Jixin's home, only to be thrown away again and again, demonstrating a strange persistence that defied common logic. Song Jixin shared that the snake had recently developed a bulge on its forehead, resembling a horn. Then, in a sudden change of topic, he mentioned that he and Zhi Gui would be leaving the town next month. Chen Ping'an simply wished them well. "Look after yourselves," he said quietly. Song Jixin laughed mischievously, poking Chen Ping'an in the side. "You are such a coward. No wonder impoverished families never produce noble sons. You are destined to be bullied in this life, and perhaps in your next life as well." Chen Ping'an remained silent. The two young boys returned to their respective homes, and Chen Ping'an closed the door as he lay down on his plank bed, then closed his eyes as he quietly murmured to himself, "May there be peace all year round. May there be safety all year round. May I be safe and peaceful all year round." Dawn was only just breaking, and Chen Ping'an had already gotten up even before the roosters began to crow. His thin blanket did little to keep him warm, but he had long grown accustomed to waking early and going to bed late, a habit formed during his years of learning pottery under Master Yao. Stepping out onto the soft, loamy soil of the courtyard, he took a deep breath of the cool morning air, feeling it fill his lungs. He stretched his thin frame, loosening the stiffness in his arms and legs, and prepared to begin his morning routine. As he stepped out into the alley, he noticed a thin, frail figure struggling with the gate of the neighboring courtyard. It was none other than Song Jixin's maidservant, Zhi Gui. She carried a heavy bucket of water with both hands and pressed her shoulder against the wooden gate, attempting to lift or push it open. She had likely just drawn water from the iron lock well in Apricot Blossom Alley. Chen Ping'an glanced at her briefly, then turned and began jogging through the narrow streets toward the eastern side of the town. Clay Vase Alley. Where he lived was situated on the westernmost side of the town. The easternmost side, near the town gate, was where a man conducted nightly patrols, oversaw merchants and visitors entering and exiting, and occasionally delivered letters that had been sent to the town. Chen Ping'an had recently arranged to take on the job of delivering these letters for 1 copper coin each, a modest source of income he had worked hard to obtain. Today, he was going to officially assume this responsibility after the Longtaido festival. Song Jixin often commented on Chen Ping'an's life in ways that were difficult to understand. The boy had a tendency to speak in enigmatic phrases, likely borrowed from the books he read, leaving Chen Ping'an scratching his head in confusion. A few days prior, for example, Song Jixin had warned him, "Beware of the spring chill, for it has been the death of many a young man." Chen Ping'an had initially been perplexed, but he knew from experience that the first days of spring often brought sudden cold snaps, harsher than winter itself. Song Jixin referred to this phenomenon as the unexpected spring chill, a sudden and unpredictable hardship that could catch people off guard. The town itself had no real walls, making it vulnerable to bandits and thieves. The so-called town gate was little more than a row of uneven fencing, serving as a makeshift checkpoint. As Chen Ping'an jogged past Apricot Blossom Alley, he noticed women and children gathering around the iron lock well, the sound of the creaking winch filling the air. He passed by a private school where a teacher from out of town gave lessons to children funded by the wealthiest local clans. In his younger days, he had often squatted outside the classroom window, listening secretly, careful not to disturb the lessons. Afterward, he had traveled to become a disciple at a dragon kiln and had not visited the school since. Further along, he approached a stone archway supported by 12 stone pillars, known locally as the Crab Archway. Song Jixin claimed, referencing an old book called the Local County Chronicles, that it was called the Grand Secretary Archway, built to commemorate a historical official. In contrast, Lu Shenyang insisted it had always been the Crab Archway, a name passed down for centuries. Each side of the archway bore 4 large inscriptions: "Doing my part," "Comply with the natural order," "Refrain from looking outward," and "Unmatched aura." Song Jixin noted that apart from one inscription, the others had been smeared or altered over time, though Chen Ping'an had little interest in investigating further. Nearby, an old but lush locust tree stood, and at its base, a modified tree trunk with 2 bluestone slabs had been fashioned into a makeshift bench. During summer, townspeople gathered under its shade to enjoy fruits from the well and play games. Chen Ping'an, accustomed to long morning jogs, continued on without pausing, heading to the eastern town gate. Not many outsiders visited, and with the recent closure of the official kilns, the town saw even fewer visitors. As he approached the gate, Chen Ping'an was surprised to see 7 or 8 strangers waiting outside. A mix of men, women, and children. They were unfamiliar to him, and most residents seldom used the eastern gate, which led to no kilns or farmland. The strangers were split into small groups, their expressions aloof and indifferent. One young man wore a tall, unusual hat and a green jade pendant at his waist. He stepped forward as if to push open the gate, then paused, withdrew his hand, clasped it behind his back, and smiled at Chen Ping'an without speaking. The people behind him displayed varied reactions, some amused, some disappointed, others wary or scornful. Suddenly, a middle-aged gatekeeper with disheveled hair swung the makeshift gate open, shouting insults at Chen Ping'an. "How desperate for money are you, you little bastard? Who in their right mind would come here at such an ungodly hour? Are you rushing off to reunite with your dead parents?" Chen Ping'an rolled his eyes, unfazed. He was used to rural ignorance and insults, and losing his temper would achieve nothing. The gatekeeper was notorious in town for being mocked, especially by bold women, and often boasted of past feats where he claimed to have beaten multiple men at once. "We'll discuss your shitty job later," he grumbled, taking his position at the gate. He reached into his pants, pulled open the door, and began collecting small embroidered pouches from the outsiders, stowing them up his sleeve before granting them passage. Chen Ping'an stepped aside to let the 8 outsiders pass through. They entered in roughly 5 groups: 2 children, a boy and a girl around 7 or 8, accompanied the young man with the green jade pendant. The boy wore a festive red robe and mouthed something rude at Chen Ping'an, only restrained by a middle-aged woman who held his hand. The little girl, fair and delicate like fine porcelain, was led by a physically imposing elderly man with white hair. She immediately began chattering at Chen Ping'an, pointing at the boy ahead. But when she caught the man's brief glance at him, she turned away, offended by his presence. Once the outsiders disappeared into the town, the gatekeeper asked Chen Ping'an if he wanted to know what they had said. Chen Ping'an nodded. They were praising you for your good looks. The gatekeeper replied with a laugh. Chen Ping'an smiled wryly, silently thinking, do I look stupid to you? The gatekeeper laughed even louder, remarking, if you weren't stupid, I wouldn't have asked you to come and deliver letters. Chen Ping'an, wise enough not to provoke him, remained silent. The gatekeeper, still musing aloud, commented on a woman in the group. Then Chen Ping'an innocently asked if she was a martial arts practitioner. The gatekeeper was taken aback. You really are a stupid kid, he said seriously. He then disappeared into his cabin and returned with a stack of letters, handing them to Chen Ping'an. It is said that fortune favors the foolish, and karma favors the righteous. Do you believe in that? He asked. Chen Ping'an spread one hand and blinked innocently. You promised me 1 copper coin per letter. The gatekeeper pulled out 5 copper coins he had prepared earlier and slammed them into Chen Ping'an's palm with a disgruntled gesture before giving him a dismissive wave. I'll give you the remaining 5 copper coins some other time. In this episode, we saw Chen Ping'an's life in a small town known for its chinaware. Following his daily struggles as an orphaned boy learning pottery and trying to make ends meet, we witnessed his disciplined routine, the challenges he faced under a strict master, and his interactions with neighbors like the mischievous Song Jixin and his maidservant Zhi Gui. We also saw the arrival of mysterious outsiders at the town gate and Chen Ping'an's first encounters with people who might change his life, giving us a glimpse into the hardships, surprises, and small joys that shape his world. What happens next? Stay tuned for the next episode of Sword of Coming. If you enjoyed this episode or found it exciting, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the latest episodes of Chen Ping'an's journey. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.